All right. Good morning and happy Sunday, all. Welcome to Weightless in Mind, Body, and Spirit with your host, Dr. Carol Penn. Yours truly. And who am I? I'm a doubly board certified family medicine doc and obesity medicine specialist. I am also your master movement meditation and mindset coach, two-time best-selling author, speaker, presenter, podcaster, wife, mom, daughter, global citizen. And I am so happy to be here with you today and introducing our guest, Dr. Sunul Corielis. But before I get to that introduction, let's just talk a little bit about obesity medicine and what we're going to be talking about today. So as you come on, please let us know where you're signing in from. Good morning, Linda. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Sunul, you're going to soon see that we have quite a lively audience, quite a bit of engagement, lots of opportunities to answer on-air questions. So we might not even get through all of our questions because this audience is so engaged. Good morning, Victoria, Delaware in the house. Good morning, and welcome. So I just want to start with a little definition because I've discovered, like many of the medical specialties or subspecialties, a lot of people don't necessarily know what obesity medicine is, or even what a definition of obesity is, and why it's being come to be viewed as a disease state or a risk factor in a disease process. So let's go with this definition that I like. It's one that I really, really like that I learned through the Obesity Medicine Association as the resource. So what is obesity? Obesity is defined as a chronic, relapsing, multifactorial neurobehavioral disease wherein an increase in body fat promotes adipose tissue dysfunction and abnormal fat mass physical forces, resulting in adverse metabolic, biomechanical, and psychosocial health consequences. And of course, you're right in there with that wheelhouse of the adverse metabolic consequences, because as everyone's going to come to know very shortly, you are a cardiologist. And I love that definition because it has that word multifactorial in it and neurobehavioral. And we also know it's a disease that remits. It's not like it has an endpoint or a cure, but it's relapsing and remitting. And so a person has to work on it consistently, and take that whole life approach. So I just wanted our wonderful audience, as they're starting to come in here, to understand what a working definition of obesity could be, and then how it plays such a role in all of our body systems, and particularly, in the cardiovascular health. So everyone, as you're coming in, you all know what to do. Go ahead, drop it in the chat, who you are, where you're from. Get ready to ask your questions and to engage. I always say, get out your pens and papers, because this is an informational program where you could take notes. We are providing education only. We are not diagnosing or treating, but we are educating and uplifting through that. So let's go ahead with Dr. Sunul Corielis, shall we? All right. So he is one of our nation's most acclaimed cardiovascular physicians and surgeons. Board certified cardiologist Dr. Sunul Corielis is also a nationally recognized wellness speaker, consultant, and media personality. Dr. Corielis is the founder and chief executive officer of Corielis Cardiology, and he shares his knowledge via his Facebook live show, Meducation, with his credentials and superb bedside manner. It's no wonder that the doctor is on track to revolutionize community-based heart healthcare across America. Welcome, Dr. Sunul.
Thank you so much, Carol, for having me. Thank you very much. It's a wonderful Sunday morning.
Yes, happy Sunday. And, gratitude to you for being here, and gratitude to your family for letting us borrow you for an hour on a Sunday morning. And I also have to give a shout out to the team that's behind this show, and Penn Global Visions, and, my beloved, who does so many things, off screen and behind the camera, just making sure that this type of information to come forward. So thank you, DM. Thank you, Shawnee. Thank you, Melanie, the Penn Global Visions team. And, and I have to say thank you to my mom this morning, who's in the hospital, dealing with an illness. And she's with us all the way. She's with us all the way in terms of this. So grateful to her, my parents, and all of our ancestors, because that's how we get to be here and to share and bring forward our knowledge. So, Dr. Sunul, I know you as the expert cardiologist that you are. Actually, we first met at an educational, good morning, Dr. Dietrich, and welcome, at an educational event. And we were, on a panel. We were strangers to each other at that point. But what soon followed was to become a friendship. So I'm deeply appreciative of that heart-to-heart connection that we have as friends. And that's part of the reason for the name of my show, Weightless in Mind, Body, and Spirit. Not only am I talking about the actual physiology, but I'm also talking about the emotional aspect, the psychological, the spiritual aspect. So, Dr. Sunul, what else would you like our amazing audience to know about you this morning?
Well, thank you again, Carol, for the opportunity to be in here with you, sharing this moment that I think is so tremendous. And I know I'm supposed to let the audience know about me, but I want to say that I applaud you for really all that you're doing, putting on this show, and really your involvement in community education and uplifting, as you said it. And I think that going back to when we met at that conference, when we shared that panel, I think that's one thing that resonated. That was one of our areas of synergy. That is, I think both are committed and really passionate about community and empowerment and education. And I think for me, that's where it really starts. That's where my heart lies, and that's really what led me to becoming a cardiologist. Before I go into it further, as you mentioned, I am a board certified cardiologist. I am a CEO of Coriolis Cardiology and a national wellness speaker. And I, through my cardiology practice, help men at the time of their lives to live the best time of their lives while protecting them from dying of heart disease. And so how did I get there? How did I become so passionate about helping the community, especially those men who are at high risk of dying of heart disease? How did I venture into that? And to me, it was really it was truly personal. What I have not shared, perhaps with you and most of the audience that is listening now, is that my dad died of heart disease at a young age. He was in his early 60s, and I was in my 20. I was just barely turning 20. And the interesting thing about that was that at the time when he died, I just joined him in the States from Haiti. I just moved from Haiti to join him after many years of separation. So we were really getting reacquainted, getting to know each other. When he left, I was 3, so I barely knew him then. So really, I was getting ready to get reacquainted, to get to know my dad, and just like that, heart disease took him from me. So you can imagine heart disease and I, we really have something going on, right? So that was my passion. That light my passion, because I remember very vividly how he was fighting heart disease with very little knowledge of the condition. It was as if he was in a war and yet did not have any tools to defend himself. He was doing all those things that we have come to be customary that we don't do if we have heart disease. He was eating, he had heart failure, and yet he was eating a lot of salt loaded food, and he was just as a result miserable and very symptomatic. And and subsequently he died. So that led me to become a cardiologist. And subsequently, as I started practicing as a cardiologist, fast forward 10 years later, I realized a lot of the patients I was taking care of were just like my dad. Even though, they had the condition, they did not know how to defend themselves. They did not know really the tools, how to take care of the condition. It was really a great disconnect. So that really led to my purpose to really empower the community, to really going into the community and speak to them and connect with them and talk to them in ways that is uplifting, that educates them, that tells them why they need to do certain things in a way that they can understand. And that to me is a way forward. And so I think that's how we got started. That's how we connected, and through those encounters of community educational sessions. And so now we have launched Meducation. That is medical education that's really pertaining to the community. So it has through that we have the ability, we're able to connect to the community in ways that really help them to make sense of their conditions and raise their awareness, and also empower them to do better. If they know better, they will do better.
Yes. So thank you so much. And just so heart moving and heartfelt to, hear the story about your father after, to a child, 20 years, that's a lifetime. And then to arrive here only to lose him so shortly. So, welcome, Dr. Onika, and welcome, Patricia. Good morning, and welcome to Weightless in Mind, Body, and Spirit. So one of the things that there's a lot of stories going on right now because of what's happening in the pandemic, where we are, losing fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles. And one of the things that the pandemic has underscored, if you will, is healthcare disparity and the gap that exists there. And I'm wondering if you could just talk for a few minutes about the healthcare disparities, COVID-19, and what you're seeing.
Oh, yes. COVID-19, I mean, as like you said, really uncovered what we have been known for many years. That is a significant disparity in healthcare outcome in our community, particularly to those chronic diseases. That heart disease is really the number one when you talk about that. And not only that, heart disease being the number one killer in our community. Our Black and brown people in our community are dying disproportionately of heart disease and heart failure. And so COVID has really uncovered that. Uncovered in a sense that COVID is almost some people look at it as a heart disease condition, because most of the clinical manifestations, there are 3 phases of the COVID-19 clinical manifestations, right? The first phase is the viral replication. That's when, the viral load goes through the roof after exposure. The second phase is the pulmonary phase. That's when they develop the respiratory symptoms. And then there's the third phase, which is the most severe case. That's the overwhelming inflammatory response that patients develop. And so a lot of times, you know, those folks definitely end up in the intensive care unit with, they need to be intubated. They have develop heart failure. They develop thrombotic events, PEs, or thrombotic strokes. And so those patients don't fare well. And we know that the more likely people to get to the phase 3 are those with chronic conditions, particularly those with underlying heart disease and underlying hypertension, chronic kidney disease, and whatnot. So COVID has really delineated that population to the extent that we see a lot more of the Black and brown people dying, because they are the ones really with the chronic conditions. They are the ones with the heart conditions to sort out with, and so it's really behooves upon us to see, how did we get there? How did we get there? How did our community disproportionately ended up getting so sick with all those chronic conditions? And so in order to do that, I think we need to look at the approach of care, how healthcare is delivered in our community. Mm-hmm. And I think our community need to understand the difference between healthcare and disease care. I think that's a very distinction that needs to be made, because a lot of times our community does not understand the difference, because a lot of times you driving on the highway, you see all those health systems, those hospitals are putting up the billboard #1 in the region for heart disease. What that means is that they are #1 in treating acute heart disease. That is the acuteness of the disease. So they're speaking for the disease state, disease care. Okay, so that's not, for me, that's not what I want. You know, I want people who's #1 in preventing me from getting the heart attack. Right. Okay? So when you tell me that you're #1 in the region in heart attack treatment, no. And so our community needs to understand that. And so the hospitals are not equipped. They are not in the business. They are not historically in the business of healthcare. They are primarily, a lot of them, their bottom line, when you look at the mission is in disease care, acute disease care, particularly. That's where they invest a lot of their infrastructures. They have all those, gadgets for acute diagnostic and treatment. So what we need to take a different approach. We need to focus on those healthcare settings where we're able to get this healthcare, true healthcare.
Absolutely. I'm smiling and laughing because a lot, I just want to emphasize to our audience, a lot of people don't know the difference between disease care and health care. And what we see on those billboards is, as you're saying, it is advertising disease care. This is where you show up when the horse is out of the barn. It's gone. You're having a heart attack. I always say, if I'm going to have a heart attack, let me be in the middle of Fifth Avenue someplace, where every hospital in every which direction within 5 minutes has a cath lab.
That's right.
That's not who I need to live my life. That's not what I need for prevention. So what are some of the areas, when you talk about healthcare and prevention, that our audience needs to be most aware of?
That's a great question, Carol. I think for me, it goes back to our pioneer physicians, I have to mention Dr. Engel and Dr. Romano, who back in the 1960s came up with the concept of the biopsychosocial model of care.
Mhm.
And so really, and that's where you come in, Carol, where you look at the individual, you look at the patient and not the disease. So that's what Dr. Engel and Dr. Romano so astutely advocated for back in the 60s. They were far ahead of their time. And yet now this is when it's really most relevant. Now that we know that we cannot be tracing diseases, we have to look at the patients. We have to look at the patients in order to be able to make a difference, in order to be able to really impact, make the transformation that we need to make, in order to be able to resonate to them why they need to do what they need to do. And so my prescription, really, some of the things that I can go into it from a perspective of the providers and also from the perspective of the patients. What are some of those things that they need to be aware of in order to be able to move healthcare ahead, in order to be able to reach the ultimate wellness? And so for the physicians, taking that biopsychosocial model, what that's going to do is going to lead them to increase empathy. They have to have that higher level of empathy. They have to want that. They have to have that in order to be able to connect with the patients at the level where they're able to not only decrease the fear in the patient, because believe it or not, when the patients are coming in, they have a lot of fear. They don't know, they are in a new environment. They don't know what's going on. They're anxious. They're not at ease. So to empathize, to be able to come alongside of the patient really is very critical in order to bring that patient to a state of ease. And that will lead them to be able to have faith. Now they have faith now. They believe. Now we can move along. Okay, so to get in that state of empathy as a provider means that you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to step out of your own shoe into the patient's shoes to be able to really understand where they're coming from, where they are, and be able to into the next thing to empathy is really lean in to be able to meet the patients where they are. In order to want to meet them where they are, you have to be willing to step out of your own shoe. So definitely meet the patients where they are is really the next critical thing, because then you're able to really lead them along to that path of wellness, but they cannot be pulled in. And which is, I think, as our system of healthcare is set up right now, it pulls patients in. You have 10, 15 minutes to see a patient. There's no way you're gonna be able to come alongside them and be able to really help them to wellness unless you're really intentional. You're willing to really be mindful of that and making it happen, and invested into that. So that what we find is that there's not a lot of that's what I call accompaniment of the patients towards wellness. There's not a lot of that, but so much of pulling and pushing. And here's this prescription. Here, go take it. And and I can understand why the patient will not go home and take that prescription, because it doesn't make sense. It's like, what? My dad, he did not take those prescriptions. He did not. And I remember he would. This was 20 years back. But my dad will go and get leeches to put on his legs to get because his legs were swollen from heart failure. So I believe the leeches were going to cure the condition. Those are the kind of things that are happening even in our community here, because we are not helping folks understand why they need to do certain things.
Why certain recommendations.
Yeah.
What about from the patient point of view? What do the patients need to know? So if you're a patient engaging with the healthcare system or with your doctor,
Yes. So for the patient, and that's where we very much under uh, we do what we do because we think that the patient's knowledge and understanding needs to be there, because a lot of times when they go to the doctor, I'm not sure the doctor may not be able to communicate to them in ways that they understand what is being said about their conditions. And so having some basic understanding as to what is heart failure, and why do you not want to eat the salt? Okay. Why do you not want to drink a lot of water? Help them understanding that. Having that knowledge is very important. It's very critical to being able to really conquer heart disease and conquer any condition for that matter. And secondly, they need to be heighten their level of awareness, because a lot of times when they have the condition, it's easy for them to put it on the back seat, and it's easy for them to go into a state of denial. And so helping them understand will also help heighten the level of awareness to the point where they now are intentionally taking steps to making those healthy measures that are prescribed and into action, to take those into action. And thirdly, it's really helping the patients embrace their nature. To embrace their nature is really where their faith comes in. They have to have faith that they will get through the condition. They have to have faith that God will not let them astray. They have to understand that. So helping them understand that, helping them embrace their nature, really it's really imparting courage into them, imparting courage that will help them to really embrace and push through, and so that they can see the rainbow at the end of the storm, that is the wellness that's to come.
All right. And so what about, often I know, patients come in and they seem a little bit confused, like, they don't know what a normal blood pressure is. They don't know when they get their labs back. They really don't understand, a lot about their labs, but, they don't, let's take lipids, for example. They don't know what that normal range could be. So just for educational and informational purposes, could you talk a little bit about what the normal range is? So when a patient comes in and they get their vital signs done, why should they care? Why should they say, well, what's my blood pressure today? And what does that mean? And then when they get their basic labs back and they look at their lipid panel, what does that mean? And what's the normal ranges? Where should they be concerned? And even if you want to go into a little bit of the medications, because people think that somehow a little bit of magical thinking, well, my lipid profile is elevated and my LDLs are high, but doc, I don't want to go on any medication.
Yeah.
So
right. No, certainly. I think that's where we have to work on imparting knowledge to them, so that they can, again, we can raise their awareness. So when it comes to hypertension is the number one leading cause of heart disease and heart failure. So it is significant, and stroke for that matter. So and the really challenging things about hypertension is that it is what we call a silent killer. That is, you are not going to have any symptoms until it knocks you out. It knocks your kidneys out, or it causes your heart failure. It causes your stroke. So it is very important to know what the numbers are, what the numbers mean as a community, so that we're able to ask the proper questions and be able to make sure that we get to go. Because interestingly enough, for as much as we know about the definition of hypertension, that is the systolic, the top number should be less than 40. Anything above 40 at this point is considered hypertension. And
Say 130 or 140?
140.
140. Thank you.
140, yes. Although there's there's push to really have a more stricter definition where we call the pre-hypertension, where you start earlier, the 130 to 140. But for the most part, all the studies that have been carried out have the definition of hypertension, the systolic top number above 140. So in the bottom number, the diastolic number between above 90, but certainly between 80 and 90 in the diastolic, in the bottom number, is a warning sign, the pre, where you want to start being alerted and concerned. Okay, but we'll start your treatment at that above 140 and above 90 range. And so, as much as we've known that we've had that definition for a long time, we've known that we have done a poor job getting people to go. Those patients who are, 150s, 160s, we are not able, as long as we've defined it, we know they are there. We have not done a good job as a medical community to get them to go. And there are a lot of factors to that, but one of the factors that will certainly help is really educating our community, our folks, to know those numbers. If they know the numbers is off, especially when they go to this doctor and they will ask the question, what is my top number, doc? What is my bottom number? Oh, my top number is up, doc. What? So what are we gonna do about it? Okay. Right. So now you have a patient who's now engaged. You have a patient who's engaged because they know. And so when they know, they ask the right question. Now they become the best self-advocate, because we do know also that the best self-care is the best healthcare. Once the patients know better, they can become the best self-advocate. Yes. Now they can really ask the right question, the proper question. And when you ask the right question, you will find the answers. So yeah.
Is the ideal, like perfect blood pressure, that 120/70? A lot of people want to know what is the perfect number. So is that, the latest in terms of what's looked at as the perfect number?
Yes. So that is the goal. Like it's particularly if you have underlying heart disease, if you have underlying heart failure, if you have diabetes, that is the number to shoot for, because we know that when your blood pressure is much higher than that, you tend to be more at risk for further complications from the underlying conditions. So we have stricter numbers when you have those underlying chronic conditions, especially if you have had strokes, you've had hypertension. But certainly it does not hurt to get your blood pressure as low as can be. And so one might ask, okay, how can I get my blood pressure as low as can be? Well, it's really when you start looking at some of the overall ways of health and wellness that you Carol, prescribe and preach about every day. You talk about things that will reduce stress, because we do know that stressors, especially on day-to-day stress from life, from work, home, those tend to cause you to be more hypertensive, drive the blood pressure up. It's almost like the fight or flight situation. When you're going to a fight, do you want your blood pressure to be low or high? Mother Nature, God is the ultimate engineer. God is great, and so God has said it, that if you're gonna go to a fight or flight situation, it's gonna make sure you get the best pressure to really get that heart, get that pressure up, so it can give you the energy that you need to get through that fight. But that becomes pathological when you are staying in a constant state of stress on a day-to-day basis. So that's why stress should be up and down. It should be, it should be up and down. That's that's the normal, natural process. And so if you're not, if you feel yourself or find yourself in a state of constant stress, you want to adapt those measures, those practices that will help you to alleviate some of the stress, like meditation.
Yeah.
And how you can speak to those, yoga, all those different practices will certainly help you to decrease that stress level. And that will in turn lead you to decrease your blood pressure. Yes.
So there's a question from one of our very intelligent audience. And the question is if you get COVID-19, physiologically speaking, what is happening in the heart? And if you have underlying chronic conditions that is causing heart failure. So what is actually happening with COVID-19 and, within the context of underlying chronic conditions?
Okay. So COVID, that's a great question. And very astute audience members we have.
Yeah, that's
on a Sunday morning, I might add.
Yes.
That is awesome. That is great. So COVID-19 is really a differentiator. It really adds another layer to what we've known about heart disease. So let's say you have heart disease, you have heart failure, underlying heart failure, and now you put COVID-19 on top of that. You really are it's a double whammy, and so that's why those folks with underlying conditions fare worse, because now they don't have the bandwidth to be able to fight. They don't have that clinical resilience to be able to pull through. And so COVID-19 is just by the way of its pathophysiology, the way it infects the cells, it goes to what's called the ACE2 receptor. So it binds to the ACE2 receptors and get into the organs. And so a lot of organs in our body have the ACE2 receptors. So that's why it's the clinical manifestation is so widespread, from stroke to respiratory problems because it affects the lungs, to heart problems because it affects the heart, gut, people have GI symptoms. And so when you faced with that, and also it does cause the acute inflammatory response, that's almost like a thrombotic phenomenon where you start developing clots everywhere. And so when you have this burden of clinical disease, then you're putting a higher load. It's almost like you're talking about fight or flight. This is really a big fight, that you're putting to your body. And if you have heart failure, you're putting that strain on the heart from all that inflammatory response. It really can be detrimental, and that's why a lot of people don't fare well. That's why the prognosis is so poor in that subgroup of people with underlying chronic conditions.
So now when you talk about that massive inflammatory responses, this is where we hear some of the scientists talking about, the cytokine cascade. Could you, talk a little bit about that? Because there was at one point they were telling people not to take ibuprofen, take acetaminophen, because it was less likely that you would get this cytokine cascade that is a part of the inflammation process. So perhaps you can bring a little clarity to that for our viewers.
Yes, absolutely. So we certainly know that the overwhelming inflammatory response is cytokine release. It's cytokine driven. It's really the body now trying to fight that infection. And it really takes it to the next level, to the point where now it becomes pathological. And so some of the ways that we have initially thought of fighting that was really through using steroids. steroids to kind of quiet down that inflammation. Although we still, the jury is still out how effective that is, just because by the time you get clinically to that point, it's that overwhelming information is so far out that it's really so much harder to reverse. So now you're playing catch up. You play. It's almost like you're doing some patching work. So that's why now the emphasis on the trials when Donavir is really that's the drug that's really seems to be like leading the pack in terms of being a little bit more effective in controlling the cascade, the clinical manifestation, and that targets the phase 1, the viral replication. So if you're able to catch it at the phase 1, you're able to treat it at phase 1, then you're more ahead of the pack. You're able to really take care of that. But even before it gets to phase 1, and I would be remiss, as a preventive cardiologist, not to mention, really the key is in prevention. It's really from prevent you from catching it from that start. We have to mention about those preventive measures, the safe practices that we still need to take in order to prevent the condition from catching the condition to start out with, because we know to prevent is so much easier than to treat.
Yes. Yeah. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. One of those old-time sayings that's absolutely true.
So social distancing is not a thing in the past. We still have to practice social distancing. We still have to really wash our hands, and if we're going out, we gotta put our face mask on. And lastly, if we're sick, if we feel any kind of discomfort, that is our body talking to us, we have to listen and stay home.
That's right. Well, I like to welcome Kieran to our show. Kieran is a dear friend that lives all the way over in Pakistan. So we truly have an international
We are international.
audience, that's for sure, which is wonderful. Because again, in the setting of COVID-19, we're talking about a global pandemic. It's everywhere we are. It is nowhere where we are not. So again, and how this is all tying into cardiovascular health is really fantastic. So I'm sure some of our viewers are going to want to know how to get in touch with Dr. Sunul. So how can they reach you or find you on social media? Because I know that you also have a show and that you come and you speak regularly in terms of medication and healthcare, cardiovascular healthcare in the community. So where can they find you?
I actually, I'm on Facebook, like you said. We do have the show Medication. Again, it's about empowering the community and really break it down in ways that make sense, why you should do what you need to do, and make it make sense for you. So we are at Facebook at Dr. Dr. Corielis, Dr. It's Dr. Sunul Corielis, DrSanulCorielis.
All right, I'm going to put that in the banner so people can take that down. Is there a website or an email that you'd like to share? Because I'll make sure that our audience gets all that information.
Yes, absolutely. Our practice website is www.corieliscardiology.com. It's CorielisCardiology.com.
I'm sorry, so it's Corielis. Say it again. Cardiology.
Cardiology.com.
All right. Do you want an email address?
Email? Yes, absolutely. We are at, we can be reached at info at CorielisCardiology.com. So it's info at CORIELUSCARDIOLOGY.com.
Excellent, excellent. So I like to get back to that other question, talking about, the lipids. So this is something we see in part of the basic labs that are being ordered. And what about the lipids? What about what's normal there? And when should a person begin to be concerned? Thank you, Dr. Dietrich. Dr. Dietrich just dropped it in the chat for the Facebook community to see all that. And I'm going to put it on the show's banner as well. So
Great.
we should talk to us a little bit about lipids and what does that mean? What are we looking for?
Yes. So why is lipids important? We do know that hyperlipidemia is one of the leading causes of heart disease. And so we need to be cognizant of the lipid levels and what are some of those things that are driving the lipid levels up. Okay, so in general terms, when we get the panel, we get the total cholesterol, we get the LDL cholesterol, which is broken down into LDL cholesterol, which is the bad cholesterol, and the HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol. So the total cholesterol, the normal range is less than 200. So if you are above 200, you know that you are in a state what we call hypercholesterolemia. And for the good cholesterol, the sweet spot is really less than 120 if you do not have any underlying chronic conditions, if you do not have hypertension or diabetes. But if you do have diabetes in particular, you want that bad cholesterol to be as low as possible. Some people will say then 70. 70 is the goal that we shoot for. And 70 is also the goal that we shoot for those who also have underlying heart disease. If you already have a heart attack and you have heart failure, 70 is the range that you're shooting for the bad cholesterol, as low as 70. And for the good cholesterol, you want that number to be as high as possible. And so what that means is really close to 50. Anything less than 40 in the 30s is low. So you want it 40s and above. Ideally 50 is what we shoot for when it comes to the good cholesterol. And so a lot of things that lead to high cholesterol, it's really, I should mention, heart disease is a lifestyle disease. It is imparted upon you based on a lot of times what you eat. And so what a lot of times lead to high cholesterol, which is one of the leading cause of heart disease, is really what you eat. So you have to be cognizant of that. Some of the food that lead to high cholesterol, is those food that are loaded with high saturated fat, those margarine, you're talking about a lot of the cheeses will lead to that. A lot of the meat, red meat in particular, will lead to high cholesterol. And so what you want to do is really try to cut down or be aware of your diet. What I have a general formula for diet that is to go lean and green. Lean meaning that if you're going to eat the meat, you're going to eat the meat that is lean. So you may say, how do you know a meat is lean? Okay, I have a good way of knowing that too. Okay, so think about the way I think about it. If you have to kill it to eat it, and it puts on a big fight, then you know it's not lean. Okay, so if it's like the fish, right? If you have to kill the fish, you slap it outside the head, it goes out. But the cow, the cow puts on a big fight, doesn't it? To kill it. So it's gonna come back and bite you. So you gotta be careful how much of the cow you're going to eat. And so, yes, so if you have to kill it to eat it, go easy on it. But if you have to kill it to eat it and it puts on a big fight, you really want to go easy because it's really going to come back and bite you. So that's my take. That's how I, tell my folks, I talk to my folks about the lean part. And green, to go green, really, you want to, anything from the ground. You're talking about green. You don't have to kill the green. You just have to pull it up from the ground. So you don't have to worry about that. You can eat all the greens you want. You don't have to worry about it coming back and bite you anyway. So that's my take on it. Really, in your plates should be very colorful. Your plate should be be well proportioned with lean protein and a lot of greens, and go easy on the carbohydrates, especially the complex processed carbohydrates like the pastas, potatoes, bread, and rice. You go easy on those. I think that will make for a good meal, a good diet to keep your cholesterol within that range that we talked about, less than 120 for the bad cholesterol, and high in the 40s and 50s for your good cholesterol.
Absolutely. And, it's so important for people to take responsibility, to know this, to be a little bit aggressive about, ask your doc, what does this mean? Go over this with me, insist upon this, and talk a little bit about the place of treatment where a person might need to take a drug in the family where you hear the last name of statin. Because a lot of people don't want to take a statin, or they say they want to try to work it out with diet and exercise first. And you just went over what some of the dietary recommendations would be. And often, though, the patient, they say those words, but they don't have a clue. And then their doctor doesn't seem to know how to guide them as to the best exercise or the best diet.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's just take a little bit of a dive into what some of the pharmaceutical recommendations might be and when a person might need to consider that.
Yes. So I recognize that a lot of times you may need to be on some medications, but primarily though, I really stress to folks really to adapt a healthy dietary measure, because a lot of times that is all the difference there is. Because if you remember, I said heart disease is a lifestyle disease. That hypercholesterolemia is really a lifestyle. So you really want to try to curtail, all the cheese parties or whatever that maybe that you like to do. Maybe not every day, maybe a couple times or once a week, because it makes a difference. It makes a difference in that cholesterol, because at the end of the day, if you do not go to the pain and agony of making that adjustment now, you will be forced to make that adjustment later when you have that heart disease or heart attack or heart failure. Now you can barely walk. You can barely enjoy those things that you like to do. So on the being on the forefront, being on the preventive end of things means that you're gonna take measures. You're gonna be in control. You're gonna be in charge of you're gonna be intentional about, okay, these are the adjustments that I want to make, and I'm going to make it happen. As opposed to now, you have no choice. Once the disease settles in, you have no choice. Now you lose all the control. I don't know about you, Carol, and I'm sure you would choose on the side of really being in control. And that's what that's what the whole preventive approach gives us, that leverage. And that's what I want people to know. It gives us that opportunity to be in control of our life, of our destiny, as opposed to now having that being taken away. Because I see it every day. It's real. Once you have the heart failure, it's a game changer. It's different. You can't do those things that you like to do anymore. You can't. You just can't. You want to, and that's the hardest part, because you want to. Your mind is still sharp. You want to, but you can't. And that's the hardest part. That's the hardest adjustment that I've seen people make. And at that time, it's not like they can take it back. And I can tell you so many times, people will want to now go and make those adjustments. They will want to. I mean, they will do anything to go make that adjustment. But
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
so that's why it's so critical, so important that you, Carol, have that platform, that you do what you do is so critical, so important to really empower people before they get to that point, because that really what makes a difference. That's where true healthcare is about. That's what makes us different from the health system.
Absolutely. And what I love is that I can have this kind of conversation with you. And so when I'm looking to recommend someone to see a cardiologist, I'm going to be recommending them to Dr. Sunil Corielis. And if, you can't see them, I know that you would then give the referral to a person who is thinking along those preventive terms. And we're part of a larger community where that is being cultivated. So we've got some more comments and questions in here. Good morning, Dr. Erica, and welcome. We've got 3. And you know what? We don't have to worry about going to a commercial break. So let's go with all of them and we're going to try to compress these, you guys, in about 5 to 10 more minutes. So from Linda, are certain blood types more susceptible to the COVID-19 virus?
That's a good question. And I know that question has been raised and it's been looked into, but it has not been proven that any one blood type is more susceptible to COVID-19 than any other blood type. So what I tell folks is let's go preventive. Let's take our preventive measures irrespective of our blood type. Prevention is key. And so if we can prevent it, and we can prevent it not just for ourselves, but for our loved ones, our friends and family. Let's go full-heartedly. Let's go for that.
Absolutely. So prevention seems to be a theme word coming up for us today. This from Victoria. Quick question regarding METs or MET. So METs level and cardiac rehab. There's a lot of misinformation and conflicting information. Please clarify the levels with regards to physical activities.
Okay, fantastic. Great question. So
you see this 7 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yeah. Man, you really do have an astute audience, and very sharp. Sunday morning? Oh, wow. That is fantastic. So yes, we generally think of formats as the bare bottom level of physical activities that folks are able to make or should be able to achieve through a cardiac rehabilitation program. And what does that mean? That means that they at least are able to walk on a flat surface, a good 50 feet without having to stop, without having to be short of breath. And also they should be able to do the activity of daily livings, that is, able to take their shower and comb their hair and brush their teeth without having to stop or being short of breath. And so much so, it's funny, we're talking about cardiac rehab. Those are the folks who are affected by heart failure or having had that massive heart attack to the point where now they're not able to even brush their teeth without being short of breath. That is the level of dysfunction we're talking about, folks. That is the level of really disability that can happen when the disease settles in. And not even talking about those who even who die from the acute MI, right? So that's why, we keep coming back to prevention. We keep coming back to the keyword prevention, which is key. That is to have control. Now you're in control. Let's maintain that level of control by making the right choices, by being intentional about the choices that we make, because we know that without doing that, then we lose control. and that leads us to a state where we're not able to do what we want to do, even the basic stuff. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that response. And now from Dr. Dietrich. So we're going right back to the dietary considerations with our final question to wrap up our hour. So what are your thoughts on the plant-based diet, vegan/vegetarian, on cardiovascular health? So I think, she wants us to drill down a little bit more on plant-based on cardiovascular health.
I think plant-based is very cardiovascular friendly, plant-based diet. And so I think we as a society eat a lot more meat than we actually need. I think it's probably goes back to the historical times when we had to do all the hunting and put our prey on our back and climb the mountains and go and do all that we need to do to it and until we're able to consume it. We don't have to do that anymore. Nope. So on that sense, when we're sitting at the we're sitting in front of the computer all day, we don't need to be eating all that meat. We don't need to and furthermore, we understand inflammation. And there's a lot of inflammatory processes that occurs when we consume all the meat that we do consume. And again, when I'm talking about meat, especially the least lean meat, the meat that comes back to bite us through many different ways, either by clogging our arteries or by causing us heart attack or whatnot. Or so definitely plant-based is really more friendly because it causes more a less inflammatory milieu, and the least inflammatory milieu is more cardiogenic and less likely to cause the cascade of plaque deposition and oxidation, because we know that the plaque buildup and plaque rupture is all inflammatory process. It's all oxidation driven, and not antioxidant. So plant-based, if you all can make that transition, there are studies that have proven that those who are actually have atherosclerosis, those who have had plaque buildup in their arteries, who have made the adjustment to a plant-based diet, to a more cardiogenic diet, that is more greens, more vegetables, less meat. They have been proven to reverse their atherosclerosis. That is, their plaque burden has shown to reverse, to decrease through different studies that have looked at the artery to different modalities, either to cardiac catheterizations or cardiac CT. So we do know that that's for fact. So Dr. Dietrich, I think for sure plant-based diet is absolutely a good way forward for those who are intentional about having a healthy heart and total wellness.
Oh, well, again, Dr. Sunil, I just want to know that you'll come back on the show, because as you can see, we can just keep going. These kind of questions, this thought process, I really think that you have been provocative. We have the audience engaged, the questions are coming forward, and I have a feeling, we could just go on and on and on. We could probably do a whole conference just on cardiometabolic health and the importance of understanding these aspects of our health, and then how this extrapolates into mind, body, and spirit. And it's kind of this beautiful, intricate feedback loop that both you and I are dedicated to educating.
That's right.
the public, educating the population. It's what gets us up in the morning. It's what motivates us.
That's right.
So I hope that you will promise to come back again as a guest.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Y'all heard that, right? Y'all heard that. And so what state are you in is a question.
I am in Philadelphia.
All right.
The city of brotherly love. Can you feel it?
Licensed in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
You hold
I'm licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
Okay.
Also have a license in New York. I went to school in New York, and licensed in DC. I did some training in DC,
Okay.
DC and Virginia. So I'm licensed in those 5 states.
So licensed in 5 states. And so, yes, licensed in New Jersey, Washington, D.C., New York, and where else? Virginia, right?
Yes.
Yes. So it's not necessarily where the doctor lives. It's where the doctor is licensed. That determines where we can practice,
Right.
where we hold our licenses. So, and we could go into a whole show about that in and of itself, because people don't necessarily understand that or correlate that as well.
Right.
But again, our network is international. So you might not necessarily be able to practice, come to one of our practices as a patient, but we're going to be able to refer you to like-minded physicians where you are. And that's our goal, because we're finding each other and we're finding those like-minded practitioners as well. So next week, I want you all to come back. We are going to have, as one of our super friends, a nurse midwife, Molly Walker, who is going to be here talking about the menstrual cycle and the female fertility cycle and how that relates to our cycles of arousal. So sexual health, which is also very, very, very important. And I see Linda's dropping in the chat, #Meditation Nation. She says, very informative. Thank you. And love to Miss Alma. Thank you. I'll receive that. So we want people to go back and we want you to watch this. We want you to share this, particularly if you know anyone that could use this information about cardiometabolic health and wellness. Please share that with friends, families, colleagues. Please, we encourage your interaction in the chat. Both Dr. Corielis and I will be able to respond to you. So we continue sharing of the information even after we sign off. And again, join me Monday through Friday at 6:45 a.m. over at Dr. Carol Penn. That's my handle on all social media. And meditate with me every morning. You heard Dr. Sunul mention that several times. It's a great tool of prevention. So if you don't get up at 6:45, watch the replay and just let me know you watch the replay. Drop it in the chat, #replay. So 6:45, Monday through Friday morning, we will be doing our guided meditation. And we know that meditation, evidence-based, is supportive for cardiovascular health and wellness. All right. We have Kenny saying, great live, my people. Thank you for wisdom in doing the show. All right. And thank you, DM, for dropping that in the chat. And I'll see you all Monday through Friday. Meditate. Oh, you're welcome, Victoria. And we'll see you right back here next Sunday. So we're talking about the menstrual cycle as it correlates to that cycle of desire. Now that's going to be a juicy show. Oh, and happy 69th wedding anniversary to my mom and my dad in heaven. 69. Woo, beautiful acknowledgments. We'll be celebrating all day today. Dr. Sunul, I can't thank you so much. As always, I'm uplifted. I know more. We've engaged and exchanged, and I feel like the world's a better place. Certainly my world's a better place. Thank you for being in it.
Thank you, Carol. It really has been a tremendous hour spending with you. It was just as enriching for me as it was for the greater community listening. And really, I applaud you for the great work you're doing. Please be safe.
All right, and there's in the chat, check out Kenny's reaching out to you. Maybe you can respond to him. He said he needs some theme music. So yes, if you need some theme music, this is a wonderful superstar in music, and yeah. So
Okay.
there we go.
Good.
Beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. The community is responding to you, Dr. Sunil.
That's right. We're excited. We're very excited.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Next week.
Take care.
Monday morning to meditate. Don't forget, meditate, heart health. All right. Bye.
Okay, so long.